Grandpa, you have to leave, right now. Hazel's words struck me like a cold splash of water. Her tiny hand clutched mine with a grip far too strong for a 12-year-old. Her nails dug into the thin skin on my wrist, and I could feel her pulse racing. The living room around us was alive with cheer, at least on the surface. Damien's house was always a little too polished for my taste. It had that magazine-perfect look, stainless steel appliances gleaming from the open kitchen, cream-colored walls without a single photo of family on them, leather couches that no one seemed comfortable sitting on. Even during a birthday party, it felt less like a home and more like a showroom. Balloons floated lazily along the ceiling, some already sagging from the heat. A cake sat untouched on the counter, its frosting spelling out "Happy Birthday," Eli in Damien's wife's elegant, looping handwriting. My grandson's laughter drifted in from the backyard where the kids played, mingling with the distant hum of a lawnmower somewhere in the neighborhood. I looked down at Hazel. Her eyes, so like her grandmother's had been, were wide with fear, her lips trembling as she whispered again, "Please, Grandpa, don't wait. Just go." My chest tightened. I searched her face, looking for some trace of mischief, some childish game. Hazel had always been dramatic. Last week she swore the neighbor's cat was possessed, but this was different. Her voice wasn't playful. It cracked under the weight of something she couldn't say aloud. "Hazel." I bent slightly, lowering my voice. My knees protested the motion, reminding me of all the years that had passed since I'd first carried her in my arms. "What is it? Did someone say something to you? Did something happen?" She shook her head violently, her braids brushing against her cheeks. She glanced over her shoulder toward the kitchen where Damien stood, a drink in hand, laughing too loudly at something his in-laws were saying. The sight of him, tall and broad-shouldered, should have been reassuring. But the way Hazel flinched when her eyes landed on her own father told me more than her words ever could. "Please," she whispered again, her voice breaking. "Don't ask. Just go. Right now." My heart sank. Questions flooded my mind. Why would she be warning me to leave my own son's house on his own son's birthday? What could be so urgent, so dangerous, that she wouldn't even explain? I straightened slowly, my cane pressing against the hardwood floor. Every instinct screamed at me to demand answers, to stay and confront whatever shadow hung over this family gathering. But I've lived 72 years, and in that time, I've learned that sometimes the smartest move is to listen to children, because they notice things adults are too blind or too proud to see. I forced a smile, though it felt brittle. I patted Hazel's hand, trying to ease the terror in her eyes. "All right, sweetheart," I murmured. "If you need me to go, I'll go." She nodded quickly, her relief visible, though it only deepened my unease. I slipped through the hallway toward the front door. The sound of laughter followed me, cheerful and warm, yet it rang hollow in my ears. My cane tapped against the floor like a ticking clock, each step echoing the unease settling in my chest. When I opened the door, the late afternoon sun greeted me. The sky was painted in strokes of gold and lavender, the air thick with the smell of grilling meat and freshly cut grass. But instead of comfort, it only heightened the contrast to the storm that clearly brewed inside. I stepped out onto the porch and shut the door gently behind me. For a moment, I stood there, breathing deeply, trying to steady myself. Hazel's frightened whisper replayed in my head. "Grandpa, you have to leave. Right now." I had no idea then, but trusting her would save me from something that could have destroyed me. I thought walking away would bring me peace, but what unfolded just minutes later proved that Hazel's warning had been the only thing standing between me and disaster. I didn't walk far. My old Buick was parked just across the street, its faded blue paint catching the last streaks of sun. I leaned against the hood, trying to quiet the unease twisting in my gut. The neighborhood was too perfect. Identical trimmed hedges, mailboxes standing in rigid lines, houses painted in those polite shades of beige and gray. Damien loved it here. He used to tell me, "Dad, this is success. This is what you never had growing up." He wasn't wrong. I'd raised him in a drafty old house with peeling paint and second-hand furniture, but it had been a home. His place felt like a shell. Through the living room window, I could still see silhouettes moving about, shadows cast against drawn curtains. The laughter inside grew louder, sharp even, like it was covering something else. I shifted uneasily, gripping my cane until my knuckles whitened. Hazel's voice echoed in my head. "Just go, please." I trusted her, but doubt gnawed at me. Was I overreacting? Was she just anxious, maybe caught in some childish misunderstanding? Part of me wanted to march back inside, confront Damien, and demand to know why my granddaughter looked at me with such terror. But then the sound came. It wasn't loud, just the faint slam of a back door, followed by muffled voices raised in argument. My hearing isn't what it used to be, but anger has a way of sharpening the edges of sound. A man's voice, firm, commanding, and then another, quieter, but tight with restraint. "Damien." I froze, my breath caught in my throat as I strained to listen. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It wasn't family banter. It wasn't the warmth of a birthday. It was confrontation. I stepped closer to the house, cane tapping softly against the sidewalk, careful not to be noticed. That's when I heard it. Damien's voice, clear as glass, carried through the open window above the sink. "He doesn't belong here anymore. He's had his time. It's my house now. He'll figure it out soon enough." My stomach dropped. I staggered back a step, nearly losing my balance. Was he talking about me? A woman's voice, Delia, my daughter-in-law, answered sharply, "Just do it cleanly. Don't drag it out. Tonight is as good a time as any." My cane slipped from my hand and clattered against the curb. For a heartbeat, I stood frozen, staring at the window, feeling the blood rush in my ears. Cleanly. Tonight. I felt the weight of those words settle in my chest like wet cement. Whatever Hazel had seen, whatever fear had made her beg me to leave, it was tied to this. My own son. The boy I had raised. The boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose tears I had dried, was planning something against me. I bent slowly, retrieved my cane, and pressed my palm against the car hood for support. My legs were trembling, not just from age, but from betrayal creeping up my spine. I had no answers yet, only fragments. But one truth cut through the fog. Hazel had saved me. If I had stayed in that house a moment longer, I might have walked into something I couldn't walk away from. I turned my gaze back to the window, the curtain shifting slightly as if someone inside had brushed past. My throat burned as questions clawed at me. Why would my son, my own flesh and blood, want me gone? What was he planning? And most of all, what secret was my granddaughter protecting me from? I thought betrayal would hurt the most, but soon I discovered there was something far darker than disloyalty waiting inside that house. I sat inside my car, staring at the steering wheel as if it could give me answers. The leather was cracked from years of use, the faint smell of oil and dust clinging to the air. My hands shook as they rested on the wheel, but not from weakness, from rage. How did it come to this? I had worked my whole life, broken my back in construction, poured every cent into giving Damien a future I never had. And now I was listening to him plot my erasure like I was some inconvenience, an old piece of furniture to be thrown away. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was the familiarity in his tone. Cold, efficient, practiced. This wasn't a decision made in a moment of anger. This had been planned. I closed my eyes, Hazel's trembling face flashing in my mind. She must have overheard something, maybe more than I had. But why confide in me like that? Why risk warning me if she knew it might get her in trouble with her own parents? Because she still loved me. That thought both warmed and shattered my heart at once. Through the glass, I caught sight of Damien moving across the kitchen. He looked calm, collected, sipping his drink, as though nothing had just been said. That mask of normality, it chilled me more than his words. I knew then something was coming, and it wasn't just a casual attempt to distance me from the family. Whatever they were planning, it was dangerous enough that Hazel had begged me to flee. And for the first time in my life, I felt fear, not of strangers, not of age, but of my own blood. I thought I understood fear, but the truth I uncovered the next day made last night's dread feel almost merciful. That night, I barely slept. The clock on my bedroom wall ticked louder than it ever had before, every second pulling me further away from the illusion that everything was fine. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in slow, uneven circles, trying to make sense of what I had overheard. I kept seeing Damien as a boy, his hair sticking up after baseball practice, his face lighting up when I clapped from the bleachers. He used to run into my arms, sweaty and smiling, saying, "Did you see that, Dad? Did you see me hit it?" How did that child become the man whose voice only hours ago had spoken about me like I was disposable? When dawn broke, I decided I couldn't just sit in silence. I needed clarity, proof of what I feared. So I returned to the neighborhood, not to knock on the door, but to watch, to see with my own eyes what Hazel had been trying to protect me from. I parked at the end of the street, far enough that Damien wouldn't notice my Buick, but close enough to observe. The house stood still, blinds drawn. At first, it looked ordinary, like any other suburban home waking to a Saturday morning. But then, a black SUV pulled up. Two men stepped out, not neighbors, not relatives, strangers, both in dark jackets, their movements sharp, deliberate. My heart thumped against my ribs. They weren't carrying balloons or gifts. They carried clipboards and leather briefcases. They looked like men who made problems disappear. They rang the doorbell, and within seconds, Damien opened the door and ushered them in with a firm handshake. Like this meeting had been long arranged. My throat went dry. I didn't know what business my son had with men like that, but I knew without question it had something to do with me. And suddenly, Hazel's desperate plea replayed in my ears louder than ever. "Please, Grandpa, don't ask. Just go." She had saved me once, but could she save me again? I thought I'd seen the worst of it, but the truth I uncovered about those men and Damien's plan nearly broke me beyond repair. I stayed in my car long after the SUV disappeared down the street. My fingers tapped nervously against the steering wheel, the way they used to before job interviews or doctor's results. Only this time, I wasn't waiting for opportunity or news. I was waiting for confirmation that my own son had become a stranger to me. When Damien finally stepped out to collect the mail, I saw it in his face. He wasn't relaxed. He wasn't smiling. He carried himself with the stiff arrogance of a man who thought he had the upper hand. His jaw clenched when he opened the envelope in his hands. He read the paper, crumpled it slightly, and muttered something I couldn't hear. And then, as if sensing the air itself was watching him, he glanced toward the street. For one terrifying second, his eyes swept past my Buick. I ducked low, my heart hammering like it hadn't since I was a young man. I sat frozen, forcing my breath shallow, until I heard the door slam shut behind him. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Hazel. "Don't come back to the house. Not today. Not tomorrow. Promise me." I stared at the words, my throat tightening. She was just a child, yet somehow she was carrying knowledge too heavy for her small shoulders. What had she seen? What had she overheard? I typed back slowly, hands trembling. "Hazel, are you safe?" The three dots appeared, blinked, then vanished. No reply. A silence heavier than stone pressed against me. That unanswered question tore at me worse than any insult Damien could hurl. If Hazel was protecting me, who was protecting her? The thought chilled me to my core. And in that moment, the betrayal shifted. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about her. I knew then I couldn't just sit back. If Damien had set his sights on me, Hazel was caught in the crossfire, and I could not, abandon her. I thought betrayal was unbearable, but realizing my granddaughter was trapped inside that house pushed me toward a choice I never imagined making. I drove back to my apartment, but I didn't go inside. I sat in the parking lot, staring at the cracked pavement and weeds pushing through, my mind spinning in circles. Hazel's message burned in my pocket like fire. "Don't come back to the house." I wanted to obey. God knows, I wanted to protect her trust in me. But the silence, the lack of her reply, ate at me until I couldn't bear it. I went upstairs, pulled out the old oak box I hadn't opened in years. Inside lay documents, my will, property deeds, bank statements, proof of everything I had built across decades of sweat and sacrifice. I thought about Damien's words. He doesn't belong here anymore. It's my house now. He wasn't just speaking in anger. He was claiming what wasn't his yet. And those men in the black SUV, they weren't neighbors. They were professionals, legal maybe, or maybe not. But they were there to help him take something from me. And then it hit me. Hazel's fear hadn't been about some vague argument. She had overheard the truth. Damien and Delia weren't just pushing me out of their lives. They were planning to strip me bare. I clenched my hands into fists, veins throbbing against the fragile skin of age. My whole life I had believed that family, no matter how flawed, carried loyalty in their blood. But sitting there, looking at the papers that proved what was mine, I understood. I was nothing but an obstacle to them, a signature waiting to be forced. I rose slowly and paced the room. Memories stabbed at me with every step. Damien's first apartment rent I had paid when he was broke, the loan for his business that he never repaid. The weekends I watched the kids so he and Delia could travel. Every sacrifice, every dollar, every moment of trust, all of it had been feeding a serpent that had grown fat under my roof. But Hazel, sweet Hazel, her whisper, her trembling hands, she had chosen me over them, though it placed her in danger. That loyalty wasn't born of duty, it was born of love. I sat back down, steadied my breath, and realized what I had to do. I couldn't storm into that house. I couldn't confront Damien in rage. That would end in disaster. No, if my own son wanted a war for what was mine, then I would fight it on my terms, carefully, quietly. For the first time in years, a strange fire flickered in my chest. Age had taken my strength, but not my mind, not my will, and this old man wasn't done yet. I thought preparation would give me peace, but when I uncovered the full extent of Damien's betrayal, I realized I had underestimated just how far he was willing to go. The next morning, I made myself do what I hadn't dared in years. I called an old friend. His name was Lawrence, a retired attorney with a voice like gravel and a mind sharper than any blade. He owed me a favor from long ago, but more than that, he had always warned me, "Keep copies of everything, Hank. One day, you'll need them." That day had come. I told him only fragments at first: Damien's strange words, Hazel's desperate warning, the men in black suits. Lawrence didn't laugh or tell me I was imagining things. He went quiet, and when he spoke again, his tone was low, steady. "They're after your estate," he said simply. "I've seen it before. Children forcing guardianship, manipulating signatures. They push the elder out of their own life. And if Hazel warned you, then it's worse than you think." Guardianship. The word clawed at me. A legal coffin for the living. That evening, while the world was settling into dinner, I went back. Not to the front door, but to the alley behind Damien's house. My cane crunched softly against gravel as I stood beneath the kitchen window. The curtains were drawn, but voices bled through. "Tomorrow," Damien was saying, calm as ever, "the papers will be ready. He'll sign, or they'll sign for him. Either way, by the end of the week, the accounts will be under my control." Delia's voice followed, smooth and poisonous. "And once the house is in our name, he won't have anywhere to run. He'll have no choice but to move in with us, or into a home. One where he won't cause problems." My knees weakened, and I gripped the window ledge to steady myself. They weren't just planning to take my money, they were planning to take me. In that moment, Hazel's wide eyes made sense. She had overheard their scheme. She had known her parents were plotting to strip me of everything: my independence, my dignity, my life as I knew it. A storm raged inside me, not just grief, but fury. The kind of fury that comes only when the knife in your back belongs to your own blood. I stepped away from the window, my breath shaking in the cold night air. They thought I was weak. They thought age had dulled me. They thought they could cage me like some animal and steal what I had bled for. But they had forgotten something. I was their father, and fathers know how to fight back. They thought they had already won. But what I did next turned their scheme into their undoing and gave Hazel the justice she deserved. The night after I overheard their plan, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, papers spread before me, my hands steady for the first time in days. Damien thought I was blind, thought I was feeble, thought I couldn't protect myself, but he had underestimated one thing: my will to survive. By sunrise, I had already met with Lawrence. Together, we signed papers that transferred my assets, not to Damien, not to Delia, but into a private trust with Hazel, named as my sole beneficiary. Every account, every property, every savings bond I had tucked away was placed beyond Damien's reach. The house he wanted, the money he craved, it was no longer mine to give, nor his to steal. That afternoon, I returned to Damien's home. I walked straight through the door, cane in hand, ignoring his startled look. Hazel's eyes widened when she saw me, and I gave her the smallest nod. She had saved me, and now it was my turn to save her. Damien tried to play his role, plastering on a smile. "Dad, what a surprise. We were just talking about you." "I know," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I heard every word." Delia stiffened, her wine glass trembling slightly. Damien's mask cracked, his jaw tightening. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut in. "You wanted to strip me of everything. My freedom, my home, my dignity. You thought I was too old, too tired, too weak to stop you." I laid the papers on the table. "But it's done. Every cent, every brick, every inch of land, it belongs to Hazel now, not you." The silence that followed was thick and sharp. Hazel gasped softly, her small hands flying to her mouth. Damien's face turned crimson. He snatched the papers, scanning them with disbelief. "This is a joke," he muttered. "It's the end of your joke," I said coldly. "You won't control me. You won't touch what I built. And when the day comes that I'm gone, it'll be Hazel who carries my legacy, not the two of you." Delia's voice cracked like glass. "You can't do this." "I already have." Hazel ran to me then, wrapping her arms around my waist. She was shaking, but her voice was steady when she whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa." For the first time in years, I felt something rise in me that I thought had long died. Pride, not in what I had built, but in who I still was. A man who could fight back. A man who refused to be erased. Damien didn't speak again. His silence was louder than any outburst, his fury swallowing him whole. I left his house without looking back. That evening, Hazel and I shared ice cream at my kitchen table. Her laughter filled the room, chasing away the shadows. And as I watched her, I realized something powerful. I had not only protected my life's work, I had given her the courage to see that love and loyalty were stronger than greed. My son had lost more than money that day. He had lost his father. But I had gained something greater. A granddaughter who had saved me, and a second chance to show her what true family meant. And that, I decided, was a legacy worth far more than any house or bank account. Strong, emotional, and unexpected. The inheritance flipped. Damien stripped of power, Hazel protected, and the grandfather victorious in dignity.